Welcome to this video. I hope this finds you well. Now, I want to share that Ecclesiastes is my favorite book in the Bible. It's so just eye-opening, and it gives you the correct perspectives on how God wants you to look or overlook your life, right? It gives us a perspective of the wisest one who ever lived, which is Solomon. It doesn't directly say this, but it says the teacher is the son of David, king of Israel, which is Solomon. And so this is going to be like a walkthrough of each chapter and the verses and things that I can take from that. I'm going to go in order, chapters 1 through 6. This is going to be a two-part thing. So this will be chapters 1 through 6. All right, to start in chapter 1, the phrase, everything is meaningless. That is the phrase that people refer to when they think of Ecclesiastes. Meaningless, meaningless, everything is meaningless. And that we can see at the very beginning in verses 1 through 2, where he says, the words of the teacher, son of David, king in Jerusalem, says, meaningless, meaningless, says the teacher, utterly meaningless, everything is meaningless. Obviously, as I said before, the teacher is Solomon, the wisest person on earth. We can read about that in 2 Chronicles chapter 1, where God presents himself to Solomon and says, ask for anything and it will be granted to you. And he, out of his heart posture of love for the Lord, he asks for wisdom. And because of this, God grants him wisdom, and he also grants him everything else that a man could ever hope for and desire. But because he receives those blessings, he ends up realizing that everything is meaningless. That's what I think is so cool about Solomon, is that he had everything. He had everything that you could ever wish for or hope for. He had all the money in the world. He had all of the enjoyment, the entertainment. He had everything that mankind could hope for. And yet he still found it meaningless and left him empty, which is why I think this book is so good. As we go on to 1:5, he writes that the sun rises and the sun sets and hurries back to it rises. And later on in 1:9, he says, what has been will be again, and what has been done will be done again. There is nothing new under the sun. You need to have the perspective and understanding that day-to-day life is the same every single day. Life doesn't change. People are going to eat, drink, sleep, repeat. It goes on and on and on. In this, we can gain perspective that as we take a step back and analyze the basics of human life, like, why are we doing this? Why are we living in this cycle of repeated action? Is there a greater purpose behind it? And finally, going down to 1:11, it says, no one remembers the former generations. Even those yet to come will not be remembered by those who follow them. You don't remember your ancestors, right? You might know their names. You might have a picture of them in your grandma's house or something. There might be some connection or a little bit of information that you might know. But in the grand scheme of things, like the ancestors that you never met, they don't have any meaning or impact or significance in your life unless for a few very outlier circumstances, right? And the generations that brought you here, like you don't know them. They're not remembered. All we are focused on is today. People are too self-centered and focused on their own lives to even be able to remember the accomplishments and the journey of life that their previous family members were on, the ones that they never met. And so keep into mind as you're walking through life, like the things that you're hoping for and praying for, if you're trying to do something of legacy that you want the world to see you as and remember, like the moment you die, it's done. It's gone. No one's going to remember. I'm sure it could be written in history books, but ultimately, like, nobody's going to care as much as you do about your own life and achievements. And that's a perspective that I think is really healthy to have, because it helps you keep your just focuses straight, like keeps your focus on God. All right, going on, we have 1:12 through 14. I'm going to read this word for word, and it says, I, the teacher, was king over Israel in Jerusalem. I applied my mind to study and to explore by wisdom all that is done under the heavens. What a heavy burden God has laid on mankind. I have seen all the things that are done under the sun. All of them are meaningless, a chasing after the wind. So Solomon has taken a step back and evaluated the activities of mankind during his reign in Israel. And I'm sure he could see them all from afar. He's the king over all. He can see what the pedestrians are doing, what the civilians of Israel are doing. And he's evaluating their every move, their everyday life. He's watching them work hard their whole day just to repeat it again tomorrow, just for their own toil to be rewarded with food and water. And he can see that this means nothing at the end of the day. Like, it's repeat, repeat, repeat. To finish off chapter 1, we're going to go to 1:18, and he says, wisdom brings sorrow. That's the summary of it, but overall it says, for with much wisdom comes much sorrow, the more knowledge, the more grief. The further that you are progressing in your walk with the Lord, you're going to know more. You're going to be wiser. That's what the sanctification of God does to the heart of a believer, is that you will learn more and become wiser. But the more you know, the more you can see the grief, the more you can see the pain and suffering of the world. And it doesn't make sense. When you really evaluate the human race from a wiser perspective, it really can open your eyes to think, like, why are we doing this, right? Why are we putting ourselves in these situations where all we feel is pain and agony? All right, so moving on to chapter 2. Chapter 2, 1 through 9 is basically, it's a summary of the things that Solomon experimented in his search for purpose and pleasure. The things that he has been told would bring him joy, the things that he told would satisfy his human heart. And some of the things are, he says, he tried cheering himself with wine, embracing folly. He undertook great projects. He built houses and vineyards. He made gardens and parks, reservoirs. He had slaves who had children. He had the most herds and flocks. He amassed gold and silver. And in the end, he says, it brought him nothing. He said, he denied myself nothing my eyes wanted. He refused his heart no pleasure. And he took a step back and realized it was all like chasing the wind, and it left him feeling empty. In 2:11, it says, nothing was gained. That's the last line of that verse. He says, nothing was gained under the sun. The world will tell you, hey, you need this stuff to satisfy the desire of your heart. Once you achieve this position of power, once you buy that new thing, or you have those people in your life, then you are going to be satisfied. But that is simply not true, because a materialistic thing will never fulfill the desire of your heart. A quote from the summary of the next few verses is that that I wrote down is, the wise and the fool will both die. So why do you waste your life living foolishly? A wise person understands that this life is not eternal, that we are living in the temporary part of our lives, that God has not promised us any amount of life, because you could die later today, tomorrow, next week. You don't know. So why do you waste your life drowning in foolish pleasures, escaping the reality that is brought before us when we die? That is a foolish act that Solomon emphasizes here. And then we go on to 24 and 25, and this is word for word. A person can do nothing better than to eat and drink and find satisfaction in their own toil. This too I see is from the hand of God, for without him who can eat or find enjoyment? And going on to 26, to the person who pleases him, God gives wisdom, knowledge, and happiness. But to the sinner he gives the task of gathering and storing up wealth, to hand it over to the one who pleases God. This too is meaningless. He's saying here that the only thing that you are truly going to get out of life that is good is if you find satisfaction in God. Because life without God, obviously, we know it has no meaning. If you are trying to find satisfaction out of uncontentment, and you're not satisfied with what the Lord's done in your life, how are you going to be happy with more? Because, like I said before, you're not promised tomorrow. So find satisfaction in the work of your hands that you have done today. That is what Solomon is trying to say. Be satisfied and proud of yourself and honor God. Okay, now going on to chapter 3. This one is probably my favorite one that we're going to go over today. There's just a lot of moments where it just really makes you stop and think. And starting with 3:1, where it says, there is a time for everything and a season for every activity under the heavens. This is a verse that a lot of people like to bring up when they're talking about God's timing, about being patient and waiting on the Lord. When they're waiting for a prayer to be answered, right? There's a time for everything. And it is so true because as we know, God is outside of time. He can see the greater picture that we cannot see. And he knows what we do not know. So in the Lord's timing, he will make it happen. It says that in Isaiah 60:22 as well, that God is in control of everything because he exists outside of our human understanding of time. And then after that, 3:2 through 8 is just a list of examples of things that happen under the sun, things that there's times for. And I'm not going to read them all, but it really takes you into a different perspective of understanding, like, hey, there's a reason for the good times and there's a reason for the bad times, and it's important to have the wisdom to acknowledge that. Next is Ecclesiastes 3:11, which is probably one of my top 5 favorite Bible verses in the whole Bible. And it says, "He has made everything beautiful in its time, and he has also set eternity in the human heart." This one is really it's like a slap in the face almost. Like, he has made everything beautiful in its time. Going back to 3:1, there's a time for every activity under the heavens. It's because when God aligns a time for something, it's because he is making it right, he is making it just, he is making it beautiful, and it will work out perfectly. The plans and the purposes of God are out of our ability to fathom. We cannot understand the way that God works and the way he moves. And later down the line, we're going to be able to look back and be like, wow, I'm so glad God did it his way and not my way. And he will make it beautiful. He will do that in your life and again and again and again. That doesn't mean everything's good, but he takes the bad and turns it into a purpose for good. And then the second part, he has also set eternity in the human heart. The reason that people are longing for greater satisfaction, they are searching and searching and searching for this thing that's going to satisfy their heart. They are looking for the thing that will never be taken away, the thing that lasts forever. And they don't understand that, hey, this is not going to last. The money, the materials, the house, whatever it is for you, it's not going to last. The only thing that can fulfill that void of longing for something that cannot be taken from you is the love and joy and salvation found in Jesus Christ. That is it. Because he is the only thing that is eternal, that matters when you die. I don't understand why people can't fathom this, but it is a spiritual war that is preventing them from being able to see that, hey, nothing matters except Jesus. A quote that I've written down about the next few verses is that life is a gift from God, and he intends for us to enjoy the little things. Because as we get further in our walk with the Lord, I truly believe that we are able to take a better view of our life with gratitude. And that the gladness of heart that God gives just grows greater and greater within us. And we can be able to understand that these little things are blessings from God themselves. And he intends for us to enjoy them. God never intended for us to, have a miserable life. He wants us to enjoy our time on earth. Now, that doesn't mean it's going to be easy, but it means that he's there with you through it all. And that the little things are blessings. Life is a blessing. So don't let anything take that blessing away from you and the joy found in that blessing, right? 3:18 is the next verse I wanted to jump to. And this says, I'm going to read this word for word. And it says, "I also said to myself, as for humans, God tests them so that they may see that they are like animals." And I sat and dwelled on this verse for a little bit because, you take that into consideration. If you've read in Genesis, it says that God made Adam the ruler over the creatures that walk the earth. So how are we like animals? But it's a verse that it's intended to humble you to realize that you are only mortal, that your life can be taken from you like that. You need to understand that you are no better than any other living thing on earth in terms of having the arrogance to think you deserve something that you don't, right? That's the best way I can word that. It's still is hard for me to think about because I spent a lot of time dwelling on this verse. I know I just said that, but it's so true. Humans are like animals. And what I wrote is to stay humble and realize you are mortal. God wants us to be humbled before him. The Bible says, those who humble themselves will be exalted, and those who exalt themselves will be humbled. Matthew 23:12. Humble yourselves before the Lord and he will lift you up. James 4:10. So God wants us to stay humble. later on in 3:20, it says, all go to the same place, all come from dust, and to dust all return. Same thing. Understand where you came from and where you are headed, and realize that this life is just like a breath of wind. In an instant, it's gone. So we need to be humble and remember our Creator in these short days of our life. The moral of this chapter is that God is in control of everything. This is what I wrote. We are nothing in this life. Identify how real eternity is, and that in the end, it is all that matters. That is the whole purpose of this book, is that we are here for the mist, that this life ultimately is just preparing us for the greater things to come in our eternity with Jesus, right? Okay, going on to chapter 4. The first 3 verses, so Ecclesiastes chapter 4, verses 1 through 3, I wrote in summary that it says, power belongs to the oppressor, and that the dead are free from seeing evil that happens. Look forward to eternity, because there is no pain, suffering, and oppression there. When we set our hope in the place that there is no pain, no suffering, where Jesus said, no thieves break in to steal, and nothing can be destroyed, where your heart is, there your treasure is, then we will be able to take a step back and realign our priorities. And going on to 4:4, it says, and I saw that all toil and all achievement spring from one person's envy of another. This too is meaningless, a chasing after the wind. A lot of people, we see this on social media, that people are chasing success, they're chasing a level of status because they are envious and jealous of an individual that they come across to on the platform, whether that's, a certain talent, a business, money, whatever it is. Like, that's what the whole platforms are designed to do, is to make you envious and jealous, to showboat your life to other people. And it triggers an emotion that's like, hey, they're doing better than me, I got to do something. And then it drives you to do something. But living like this and having a motive such as that is not a healthy way to live. Same thing, if you are trying to achieve something out of jealousy, like, it's not healthy. It's only going to drive you mad in the end. Take a step back, stop caring what other people think, and allow God to realign your priorities. And you will see that in the grand scheme of things, like, it does not matter what they are doing, what they have, because you are on your own distinct path. And God has not forsaken you on that path. And He will bring light to you and show you the way that He has for you. And then going on to 4:7 through 8, a summary is that there is a man all alone. He has no brothers or sons, and he is driven for wealth, and he is not content with what he has. And he's living like this, and what it leads to is it deprives him of enjoying his life. And he acknowledges his suffering, but that does not solve his uncontentment problem. He is still in the loop of the rat circle of chasing more and more and more. He's deprived himself of enjoying the little things in life, because he's discovering that, hey, what's the point of doing all this if I have no one else around me, if I have nothing to live for except money? This is meaningless. It says again, this is like chasing the wind. If you're prioritizing something of success over the people around you, over leaving an impact to people, over being something of significance that actually makes a difference, and it's all a selfish ambition, you are going to be left with a void of meaninglessness and insignificance. I've said this before. And then after this, in the final verses 4:9 through 11, where the theme is, it says, 2 are better than 1. 2 are better than 1 because you are able to help your neighbor. You are able to pick them up when they fall. And then to summarize the rest of chapter 4, I wrote that it is better to be poor and wise than to be old and foolish. Advancing to becoming a king eventually leads to nothing. And the chapter talks about striving to be something more out of hopes of fulfillment. And that's the takeaway. And once again, meaningless. It's meaningless chasing something that is only going to be insignificant, because you will not be remembered. All right, going on to chapter 5. Out of the opening verses, the theme is to be mindful when you are talking with God and what you present before the Lord, because you need to understand. It says this in 4, I believe, where it says, God is in heaven and you are on earth, so let your words be few. You need to be cautious and mindful of what you're saying to God, because you have to understand, like, hey, we don't know everything. It's the same thing of staying humble. Like, hey, Do not just yap about stuff you don't understand, but simply just allow your heart to be genuine before the Lord, because he knows what you need before you ask him. 5:2 says, do not be quick with your mouth and do not be hasty in your heart to utter anything before God, because God is in heaven and you are on earth, so let your words be few. God knows what you need. Trust in him with everything and he will provide. That's what he's there for. Just as Jesus said when he gave us instructions on how to pray, Jesus said pagans use long, lengthy, meaningless words, and God does not approve of this. This does not appeal to God because he sees their heart posture. We need to have a genuine heart when we approach the Lord, and he will honor that. Going on to 5:4-7, the theme of this that I wrote is that your words can lead you into sin if you are not careful. Do not make promises that you cannot keep. People love to say things, but they don't like to actually do them. So be cautious, let your words be few. Too many people allow the mouth to dig them into a hole because of what they say. Another reference to this is James chapter 3, where it talks all about the tongue. At the end of the day, fear God and you will be on the right path. Reject evil. To fear the Lord is to hate evil. Keep that in mind. Going on to 5:8, it says, if you see the poor oppressed in a district and justice and rights denied, do not be surprised at such things. For one official is eyed by a higher one, and over them both are others higher still. What I took away from this is that, hey, there's always a bigger fish, and that we do not need to be shocked when there is corruption in our leadership and government. We are seeing this today. Corruption, lust for power, and there's people who are suffering because of the bad leadership we've had over the past few years, and so on and so forth. But we are not supposed to be shocked when these things happen, because mankind's evil. We know this. God has allowed evil leaders to be on the throne. We know this when we read through the Bible, right? Going on to 5:10, and it says, whoever loves money never has enough. Whoever loves wealth is never satisfied with their income. This too is meaningless. When you love money above all else, and you are just driven to have more and more and more, it's going to steal all purpose and joy from your life, and it will eventually drive you mad. That's what I wrote for this. Going on to 5:12, it says, the sleep of a laborer is sweet, whether they eat little or much. But as for the rich, their abundance permits them no sleep. Takeaway of this is that when you have more responsibility. And this can cause you to lead to more anxiety, more stress, more worry, as stated by no sleep. That's what that's referencing. And so we need to be trustworthy with what we have, and we can be trusted with much. But don't always think that having more is the blessing that you think it will be, because it could end up being a great burden on your life if you are not careful. Going on to 5:16-17, it says, this too is a grievous evil. As everyone comes, so they depart. And what do they gain since they toil for the wind? All their days they eat in darkness with great frustration, affliction, and anger. The moral is, people are born from dust, work their whole life, and this causes them to spend their life frustrated, afflicted, and angry just for them to die. Why do you live in a miserable way of life like this? People have this wrong perspective, right? People don't see life for the bigger picture that it is, because they are driven away and driven mad by the fleshly desires that want them to have more and more and more. And there's no need to put that unnecessary pressure on your life. You are only going to make it worse than it needs to be. Take a step back, look at what you're doing, and realize, hey, is this struggle, is this really worth it? Is this frustration really worth it? Or am I causing this myself and it's unnecessary? Take a step back and think about that. To end chapter 5, I'm going to go on to 5:19-20. And it says, moreover, when God gives someone wealth and possessions and the ability to enjoy them, to accept their lot and be happy in their toil, this is a gift of God. They seldom reflect on the days of their life, because God keeps them occupied with gladness of heart. If you keep God in the center of everything, life is a gift. If you focus on him and keep him first and honor him in what you're doing, life is a gift. That's how it's supposed to be. We are supposed to enjoy the things we have. We are supposed to enjoy life. But if you put God first, that is when it becomes a blessing. To be satisfied with the work of your hands, and that God provides the joy of your heart that you are seeking for. When you keep God in the center of everything, you will see the joy and the light of everything else, because without God, it all is nothing. Going on to chapter 6. The first two verses I want to highlight, I spent a good amount of time dwelling on these verses as well. And this is what I wrote. I said, it's confusing to understand, but this is what I came away. Do not strive for something out of uncontentment, because it is not promised that you can enjoy it when you have it. Don't long for tomorrow when you could die today. The example is, as he says, God gives some people wealth. This is 6:2, by the way. God gives some people wealth, possessions, and honor, so that they lack nothing their hearts desire. But God does not grant them the ability to enjoy them, and strangers enjoy them instead. You could be striving for a greater achievement, a greater success, greater new materialistic item, but you could receive it and then not be able to enjoy it. You don't know what's going to happen. You could get injured. You could get sick. The point of this message is not to not have goals. It's not to not have hopes, but you can't put your entire joy in that, because it's not promised that that's even going to happen for you, even if you receive it. And it's all about, hey, God gave me today. I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. I'll do what I can right now. I will enjoy life as God has given it to me today. That's what I took away from chapter 6, 1-2. The last part of chapter 6 I wanted to share is 6:12, and it says, "For who knows what is good for a person in life? During the few and meaningless days they pass through like a shadow. Who can tell them what will happen under the sun after they are gone?" Same thing. You're gone soon. It is an instant. 70, 80 years is like the snap of a finger to God. Your days are like a shadow. If you made it to the end, I hope that you took something of value away from this. Ecclesiastes is one of the greatest pieces of wisdom that we as humans have in our entire world. And God granted us this wisdom through Solomon, and we're able to read this. And I know that this book has probably changed my perspective on seeing the whole world unlike anything else. And this is my favorite book in the Bible, as I said in the beginning, and for a very distinct reason. It has saved me from putting so much pressure on myself in my own life. It has saved me from bad motives that wanted me to go after something with a unhealthy desire, and God realigned me because I allowed him to. And now I'm here reading it again and like, whoa, this is so applicable if you allow him to use it in your life. God is good. Seek him first, and all things will be taken care of. God bless you guys. I'll see you in the next one for part 2.